Uh, I am a nurse working in hemodialysis unit, and after the presentation, I'm very surprised to know a lot of things. And one question about the actually, I have two questions in my mind. The first one is for living donor, because the presentation said at least has to be 16 to 60. So is this automatically withdraw if the patient or if the living donor is over 60?
So you are asking for both
Living
liver,
donor.
yes, liver and kidney, okay?
Yeah.
I'll start. Hi. Okay, so that's a great question. So I'll start from a kidney perspective. So there is in our program no upper age limit for living kidney donation. We have a minimum age limit of 18, of course, but there is no upper age limit for our program. We have had our oldest living kidney donor in our program has been 75 years of age. So it really is an assessment of individual risk as opposed to just biological age. So there is no upper age limit in our program from kidney. I'll defer to Dr. Cattral from a liver perspective.
As I mentioned, the age limits are 16 to 60. A living donor donation procedure is it's a much bigger surgery than a kidney donation, and as safety is as we mentioned, is our most important consideration. And so we made a programmatic decision to limit it to 60, and at the moment, that's probably where we're going to stay.
Thank you. And my second question, can I go ahead?
Yeah,
because also related to the living donor. It mentioned the living donor has to be fit enough and healthy enough, right? And there is list, if the living donor is obesity, high blood pressure, diabetic, is it automatically withdraw too?
That's a great question. So the eligibility criteria for living kidney donation really depends on the spectrum of the issue at hand. So for example, high blood pressure is not an automatic disqualifier. It's not an automatic disqualifier. So what we're looking for is we're looking for people who are healthy. Now, high blood pressure, there is a spectrum. Some people have very well-controlled blood pressure with only 1 or 2 medications. Others have severe blood pressure that is very poorly controlled. So it really depends on the nature of the problem and how well-controlled it is. So that's part of our risk assessment is we'll look at the issue at hand and determine whether or not it is mild enough that we can proceed safely. Same thing for obesity and diabetes. So we'll look at body mass index or the magnitude of how bad the blood sugars are before making a decision whether or not it's safe enough to proceed. Type 2 diabetes or type 1 diabetes on medical therapy requiring either insulin or medications is a reason why people cannot donate. It's one of the most common reasons, as well as obesity where the body mass index is greater than 35. But below that, there really are nuances and is part of the individual risk assessment. So when in doubt, always best to contact our program and we can provide some guidance to the donors on whether or not they would be suitable to proceed.
So this is a bit different for the liver. Dr. Cattral, do you want to answer that from a liver's perspective?
Again, they have to be physically fit. We will consider patients who have mild hypertension that is well controlled. Their BMI upper limit is generally 35, but we would generally want them to go into a weight loss program to get their BMI to 30 or less. With our investigations, we assess how much fat is in the liver. And although it does correlate with BMI, not always, we sometimes are surprised that even in patients with low BMIs, they can have a lot of fat in their liver. Interestingly, it's reversible. So in those patients, we would put them on a weight loss program and reassess them later. And in many instances, the amount of fat in the liver comes back to under 5%, which is our upper limit. And then we would proceed.
Okay.
Hi, thank you so much for the presentations. My name is Christine, and I'm a living kidney donor. Ironically, I didn't really know anything about liver donation when I donated the kidney. And this might sound a little bit whacked, but is it possible to, while you're in there, to donate both the kidney and liver? I know, it could be a little bit far-fetched, but I was curious because after the fact, when I heard about living liver donation, the thought did cross my mind. I said, well, why didn't anybody tell me about that? And maybe there would have been an opportunity.
Go ahead, Mark.
Well, interestingly, we have done, we have had donors in whom the kidney and the liver has been donated, but not at the same time. Although it has been done in the world, there was a case in Brazil in which someone did donate the liver and kidney at the same time, but in our practice, it's always done sequentially.
Also, just make one comment as well, is that we have certain circumstances where people will come forward as, for example, a potential liver donor. And as Dr. Cattral indicated, sometimes people are unsuitable for anatomical reasons, for example, and there's still the opportunity, of course, to then donate a kidney. And even there's, you know, as there are different criteria, so that does happen relatively frequently where anonymous donors do kind of initially come forward with a certain intent and donate another organ ultimately.
Thank you. There are a number of questions from the Slido. We are going to take a few of them, and then we come back to the audience again. So it's a little hard for me to read the question from these angles, but
Nazi, it's okay. We can read it from back here. maybe.
perfect.
Okay, so I'll start maybe with the third down for the donors. Did any one of the donors have any complications? And I believe there are mics up there. If you wouldn't mind passing the mic, that would be great.
Hi. I did end up having a complication, but it wasn't something that I went into surgery thinking would never happen. It can and does happen sometimes, but I also knew that should it happen, they would catch it right away, and they did. It was a bowel obstruction, and I was treated and then began recovering from that, but it doesn't change. I would still do it again in a heartbeat.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Perfect. I think, do you want to take the one for Dr. Cattral? There is something, oh, is it gone, that question?
Yeah, I have a question about cultural, religious opposition to transplants. So reincarnation, Jehovah's Witnesses, blood transfusion, ... That obviously must play a significant part in the rationale for this event, actually, because there are segments in society, whatever, subgroups, whatever you want to call them, that do not want transplant, period. Can you just educate us briefly as to any of your personal direct experiences in dealing with this and the way you have approached it currently in either avoiding or approaching such people?
So we've worked with different religious groups, and we've gone to their leaders, and we have actually got perspectives that most of the religions that are prevalent in South Asian community, they do allow organ and tissue donation. And still there are some preconceived ideas and notions that, you know, it prevents you from going to heavens. And again, I know in one of the senior sessions that we did, this was one of the remarks that we got, that if I sign up to become an organ donor or if I donate a part of me, then I wouldn't go to heaven, is one of the remarks that came out of the conversation. And then this is how we approached it. We said to them, you know, we all have families. And I said it to them on me. I have a toddler. Let's say my son needs a part. My son needs an organ. Would I then receive it for him? If we're looking for a donor for him, then should I not take it? Because it'll be somebody giving it to him, is how we sort of reason it. And then again, like I said, talking about it, normalizing it, is the key.
I would say that in North America, the qualms that I have heard about organ donation and sometimes they have a cultural or religious aspect, largely revolve around deceased donation, where it's very important to retrieve the organs almost immediately after death. And some more traditional notions of death rely on the heart not beating or the body stopping breathing or otherwise disintegrating versus brain death, which is one manner of pronouncing death in hospitals today. But living donation is almost universally accepted, as far as I can tell, among different religious traditions. In fact, some of the groups around the world, such as Orthodox Jews or Japanese Buddhists, where there has been some resistance historically to deceased donation, have been among the most active people in engaging in living donation when someone in their community or someone else who they learn of needs an organ.
Thank you. I think I saw on the screen a question, perhaps Jed, you can answer. That was it's gone now, but something about if a donor requires a way out, what are the ethical approaches to that, and what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, sure. We want to encourage people to step forward and get tested for donation if this is something they're exploring, and engage in those conversations while feeling as though they can change their mind at any time if this isn't right for them or it just isn't right at this moment. And so usually if someone is testing for living donation, of course their conversations with our clinicians are private, their privacy and confidentiality is assured. And if they decide that they would like to bow out but aren't quite sure how to explain that to the potential recipient, we will simply offer to say that they were medically unsuitable. We would not want to enter incorrect information into anyone's medical chart, because that could create problems later on for the patient, but there's usually a diplomatic way to do that. Sunita, I know that you're very involved as a donor advocate, I guess would be the title, but a donor physician. Is there anything you'd want to add?
Yeah, I echo exactly what Jed has said, is that, we keep the teams completely separate and we communicate exclusively as a donor team with donors. So it's not uncommon that recipients will contact the donor team to have information on the donor status. We preserve confidentiality 100% of the time. We discuss only donor information with our donors. And as Jed mentioned, if there is the possibility of opting out of the process at any period of time. And so we always respect that, and we will work with the recipient to transmit that information by maintaining confidentiality of the donor. So that's a key principle that we adhere to as well, to ensure that donors can explore. And it happens that people come forward, they think that it's right for them, and then as they go through the process, they realize that it isn't as they obtain more information. And so it's important for people to have the opportunity to back out without kind of feelings of guilt or feeling that their relationship will be breached with their intended recipient.
Thank you.
Yeah, hi, greeting everybody. My name is Mohammad Wasim Dar, and I'm a kidney recipient from last 14 years. And I recently came to Canada. Dr. Mushi is my specialist, and I am really honored that today I'm here because he invited me and showed me this platform. So I have couple of questions. Number one, that being a kidney recipient, is it okay, or I'm eligible to donate my liver? Liver for liver. Can I be a donor? And another thing, that being a recipient last 14 years, so I've been through with so many things and so many issues. I'm coping up very good, but still, gradually, with the time, your functions goes weak. And how good is another transplant if I might need in a couple of years or few years? How fruitful is? What are the risks involved in this? And third and last question with Ms. Gill. I'm really honored to be here, so I would be the part of your organization, so I can share my experience. I can bring the courage and hope for the families and for the people who are not aware of this kind of issues, and I can help them to normalize them and help them to understand things and help them to let them know the life, what is the importance of life. If you can give an organ to somebody, you can give a life to them, and they are very happy in their lives. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Your first question about paying it forward is probably best directed to Dr. Cattral because he has the physiological knowledge on that one.
Oh. I'd have to say we have, to date, I don't think we've considered somebody who's been a living or a kidney donor recipient as a liver donor. I think it's a consideration, but we haven't to date.
Yeah. So, a couple of things about retransplantation. So, of course, as I highlighted in my presentation today, ideally we would have every recipient have one kidney transplant that would last them for their entire lives, and that's what, as a community, we are working towards, is improving what we call graft survival, so how long the kidney works. We're not there yet, and so many people in your circumstance will require a second transplant. And so, so we do them, and very frequent, and you know, as we continue over time, we're doing more and more and more. So certainly it's a possibility to get a second transplant, absolutely. And in fact, as one's transplant is slowly potentially failing, that's a discussion that we try to have with the patient early on to potentially try to seek out another living donor to have that second transplant opportunity. So certainly done fairly commonly with excellent outcomes.